Hi, everybody. My name is Lena Jerhali. I am a board member of 1455 Literary Arts, a licensed psychotherapist, and an author. And we are thrilled today, no pun intended, to be joined by some of the most successful thriller authors of our time right now. And we are really honored that they have given us our time. So without further ado, I am going to introduce them, starting with Sarah Peckinen. Sarah is the #1 New York Times bestselling co-author of 4 thriller novels, The Golden Couple, The Wife Between Us, An Anonymous Girl, and You Are Not Alone. She's also the author of 8 USA Today and internationally bestselling solo novels. She's the mother of 3 boys, which explains why she wrote part of her debut novel at Chuck E. Cheese. Seriously, Sarah penned her first book, Miscellaneous Tales and Poems, at the age of 10. When publishers failed to jump upon this literary masterpiece, Sarah followed up by sending them a sternly worded letter on Raggedy Ann stationery. Sarah still has that letter and carries it to New York every time she has meetings with her publisher, as a reminder that dreams do come true. I love that. Okay. And next we have Alex Finlay. He's the author of the 2021 breakout novel, Every Last Fear, and one of 2022's most anticipated thrillers, The Night Shift. His work has been an Indie Next Pick, a Library Reads selection, an Amazon Editor's Best Thriller, as well as a CNN, Newsweek, E!, BuzzFeed, Business Week, Goodreads, Parade, Pop Sugar, Scribed, and Reader's Digest Best or Most Anticipated Thrillers of the Year. Alex's novels have been translated into 17 languages, and Every Last Fear is in development for a major television series. Vera Kurian is a writer and scientist based in Washington, D.C. Her debut novel, Never Saw Me Coming, was published by Park Row Books and Harvill Secker Vintage in September 2021. Her short fiction has been published in magazines such as Glimmer, Train, Day One, and The Pinch. She was born and raised in the Mid-Atlantic region before stints in New York City and LA returned her to her rightful home of D.C., where she's lived for most of her adult life. She has a PhD in social psychology, where she studied intergroup relations, ideology, and quantitative methods. She blogs regularly about writing, horror movies, and pop culture terrible TV. She enjoys existentialism and puppies. And finally, last but not least, we have Kirsten Majlin. She's an Amazon top 10 bestselling author of psychological thrillers and a member of the International Thriller Writers Novelists and the Alliance of Independent Authors. Kirsten is a KDP Select All-Star and a recipient of Thriller Fix's Best Psychological Thriller Award and Suspense Magazine's Best Book of 2021 award. She grew up in rural Western Kentucky and later relocated to Nashville, Tennessee, where she now lives with her husband, daughter, and their 2 Boston Terriers. Kirsten's work is being translated into multiple languages, and readers across the world refer to her as the Queen of Twists. A Netflix addict, Shonda Rhimes superfan, psychology fanatic, and indoor enthusiast, Kirsten enjoys rainy days spent with her nose in a book. So really impressive, especially in the publishing world, which we'll get to in a minute about how difficult it is to reach this kind of success. But what I wanted to start with, and this is a question for all of you, and I'll just, call out your name. Writing fiction takes a great deal of imagination. And writing good fiction takes an incredible amount of talent. So where do you get your inspiration and how do you come up with ideas? Especially for those of you that have written so many books. I mean, it must be challenging to have to come up with these ideas so many times. So let's start with Kirsten, actually, since I think you've written the most.
Yeah, so I get my inspiration from everywhere. Other movies, other books that I've read, just people watching out in general in the world. I found that with COVID, my inspiration kind of waned a little bit because I wasn't out as much. And so now that I'm getting back out, I feel like I'm more inspired. And so it's kind of a lame answer, I guess, but all over the place. I get my inspiration from everything I do and all of the media that I consume.
Great, thank you. And Alex, what about you?
Oh, I hate this question because I've never had a great answer to it, but like Kirsten, just every day, from my family, the things my kids do. My latest novel, The Night Shift, I got the idea when I was on a walk in Georgetown. I was walking by the Starbucks down there, and I remembered when I first moved to the city, 100 years ago, it feels like, there was a tragic workplace killing there where all the employees were killed. And that for me was like the seed of the idea for the night shift, which where I based the opening scene at a Blockbuster video, and all the employees are kind of marched to the back room and murdered, and one survives. And so that's just like a vivid example of somewhere I get my ideas from. But they can come from anywhere, from going to my kids' soccer game to overhearing somebody on the metro, you name it.
Cool. Yeah, I actually live right down the street from that Starbucks. And so I'm in there quite a lot. And it always stops my heart when I see that plaque that they have on the wall and dedicated to those employees. Alex, I just want to throw an extra question, because the night shift was set in the 90s with Blockbuster Video and all of these things that a lot of us grew up with. What was it about the 90s that was compelling to you to place that Starbucks incident in the 90s?
Well, it was kind of a confluence of the Starbucks incident, and then closer to where I lived in Bethesda, there had been another similar kind of crime 10 years later at the Lululemon, again, a workplace murder. And there was it was like two employees, one was brutally murdered. The next morning, the two are found, one's alive. And there was this twist in that it turned out that one of the employees had staged the whole thing and killed the other. And so I had the idea for two very similar crimes a decade or so apart. And then I just started thinking, what's kind of these kind of crimes are particularly insidious because it's often young people working the nights, working at their part-time jobs. And we've all had those situations where we kind of become family with our people we first work with. And so then I started thinking about, well, what kind of place would really bring back memories to people. And Blockbuster just came to mind, because I think for people of a certain age, before we could just click a button and watch anything we wanted, it was a big ritual to go to Blockbusters on Friday night and hope that your favorite new movie was there. And I, looking into it a little further, I watched a documentary called The Last Blockbuster, where there's like this one Blockbuster left in the whole country, still in Oregon, and people from all over the world fly to this place because they just love this feeling Blockbuster gave them. And so all that combined made me pick the Blockbuster. Last piece on the 90s, I think for all of us writers, for me anyway, the cell phone makes things, a little different for back in the 90s, somebody goes missing, you're used to not talking to each other all the time. You're used to not having constant communication. You didn't carry around this thing where you could be tracked. And so there's something for a thriller writer anyway that's attractive about that era. So all that stuff.
Yeah, it was great. It evoked a lot of nostalgia, I know, for your readers to have all of that, the 90s theme. So it was really something to connect with. So I really appreciated that as a reader.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Vera, I'm especially interested to ask you, because I write about real psychopaths and narcissists, and you had a really original, fresh idea that I know even the New York Times wrote about your book. And that's a huge, huge deal for your debut.
So I'm told.
Yes, for your debut. So tell us a little bit about your inspiration and about the psychopaths and all of that.
I'm kind of a believer in the subconscious of I'm always consuming tons of information, whether it's news or books or TV. And I sometimes just get a flash of an image, and without spoilers, there's a time in the book where there's someone takes out a handkerchief and kind of snaps it. And I saw that, and it was someone catching someone doing something else, then not responding in the right way. And I kind of saw that, and I've been thinking that I'd been reading a lot of thrillers for the past 10 years, a lot of which featured kind of dumb women. And I was really frustrated by that. So I wanted to write a book about a very smart, manipulative, driven person who was extremely agentic, rather than a story happening to her. But I guess it is kind of a wacky idea. My ideas tend to be kind of high concept. So the idea was that there's a school for psychopaths, and this girl is, having a nefarious plan, and then it turns out someone's trying to kill the 7 psychopaths in the program, which I guess I just to take an idea and then bring it to the next level. But as a true crime person, I'd always been interested in psychopaths and serial killers and that kind of stuff. But I wanted to write a perspective through one which would make the reader feel a little uncomfortable that they found themselves liking her, or at least rooting for her.
I certainly was when I was reading
Yeah.
it. She's a likable character. And I think it's great that you brought the idea of what is called community psychopaths to the mainstream, because, you know, when I was researching my own true crime book about a psychopath, I learned from forensic psychologists that there's something called community psychopaths, which are essentially nonviolent psychopaths that walk among us, and they just don't really have the same feelings or emotions, and they do a lot of mimicking. And so I really like how you captured that, because I think the media often makes us think that psychopaths are killing, you know, tiny animals from a young age, and that's not always the picture of it. So I appreciated that, because I think it's a more actual realistic view of what a psychopath is.
Yeah, like we all probably know one, and most people think serial killers tend to be psychopaths, but a lot of them actually, most of them probably aren't.
Yeah, that's interesting.
We
Okay,
live
so
in Washington, so we've got a lot.
yes, yeah, we would say the DC, the political psychopaths. In LA, it's entertainment. In New York, it's finance, as Bret Easton Ellis did with American Psycho. So I always think that's interesting. Okay, so Sarah, let's go with you and all your inspiration. And you've had quite a few published as well. Oh, Sarah, we can't hear you.
Better?
Yes.
Okay. Like everybody else, I look to external things, and I'm doing that right now. I just finished a book, so I'm deliberately filling up on story. I'm reading, I'm binging movies. I'm just trying to stockpile kind of creativity and inspiration everywhere I can. So most of the time it is external, and all the things everybody else mentioned. It's a snippet of a conversation. It's something I read. It's something I see. But my last book actually came about more internally. I know somebody who's pretty mentally ill, and I was thinking to myself, gosh, they are disappearing. And that just started twisting in my head, just that line. And I started thinking about all the ways that women disappear or are encouraged to disappear. We're encouraged to, disappear into roles like motherhood. We disappear at the age of 40 in the eyes of men. We're constantly encouraged to lose weight, to shrink physically. There are just so many ways that women do that. And then I began to think about, well, what are some of the other ways that maybe haven't been written about as much? And that was the inspiration for the book I just completed. That'll be out in a year.
Okay, good. Yeah. And I'm going to be asking you at the end what you're working on and what's coming out, so we can get a taste of that. So I'm excited to hear about that as well. And this is sort of a follow-up question on the inspiration, but this was inspired by reading Vera's bio and her love of horror films. And some of your books have also sort of reminded me of some elements of horror films, or some of favorite Netflix shows, like You, for example, with Penn Badgley. There's some elements of that. So I wanted to know, what are some of your favorite inspirations, genres, time periods? I know I touched upon that with Alex in the 90s. Slasher films from the 80s, TV shows, a specific movie, an author, a book. Like what do you really like, and what really motivates you, and who do you kind of aspire to emulate with some of these things? So let's start with Sarah, actually. So I ended with you, but let's start with you for this one.
Yeah, I mean, I could not pin it down to just one. I'm inspired. I love reading across genres. I love watching, many different things. So I like to kind of be open to a lot of different voices and different material. But the thing that I have to do is, when I'm writing, I need to be very careful that I'm not reading a lot of genre. I think it's just a voice can slip into your head. You can kind of get intrigued by an idea subconsciously, and then a form of it comes out in your own writing. So I try to be very careful to stay away from reading in my genre when I am writing. When I'm done writing, I'll go back and gobble everything up.
Yeah, sounds good. And Kirsten, what about you?
Yeah, I'm kind of the exact opposite. I do a lot of reading when I write, because for me, I feel like I'm a better writer when I'm reading. I think it just gives me like fresh ideas and fresh, I don't know, insight. It's like a way to escape. So I love to read, and I mainly only read our genre, and only watch our genre really, aside from like goofy sitcoms. My favorite thing to read or watch is thrillers. And so one show that I really love, and I actually released a book last year based on it, was Lost. The show, I'd always just, it was one of my favorites, and I wanted to write this island thriller where there were a group of people stuck on an island and having to survive the elements. And so I wrote The Missing, and I just loved all of that. And yeah, I can't really pin it down to one person either. One author that I will say outside of our genre that I really love, and she's pretty much the only author I read outside of the thriller world, is Jodi Picoult. I just think that her twists are amazing. Her storytelling is beautiful. And I really love her work, and I would love to, one day be on her level, because I think she's great.
Awesome. Thank you. And Alex, what about you? I know we talked about the 90s a bit, but
the question is, what do I
yeah, like what are some of your favorite, either horror movies or TV shows or authors or anybody?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm a junkie of Netflix. I always like, I'm a lawyer, and people always say, "Oh, you're gonna leave your day job?" And I'm like, well, if I left my day job, I just watch Netflix all day and work on my book at the last minute anyway. So no, I'm gonna keep doing that as well. I watch a lot of Netflix. I do a lot of reading. I like to read when I write as well, like Kirsten, because I do think there's something about reading that kind of does something to your mind, like exercise does as well, that kind of does something, sparks the more creative side, at least for me. Favorite shows, I have too many. Embarrassingly, I watch The Bachelor with my daughter, my 20-year-old daughter, a lot. I shouldn't admit on a recording like this, but we do. That's our thing. And I like true crime. I've watched pretty much, I'm just started Peaky Blinders final season, which is not a lot of, I don't know that it's a little underrated on Netflix, but I could go on and on. I'm a consumer of books and media, so.
Great, thank you. And Vera, what about you?
I was sort of born and raised on horror movies, like if you can't tell. And that was a genre. I read a lot of Stephen King growing up, and I think he's a writer I admire a lot because he's both very creative and I think an old-fashioned storyteller, where I never feel like he's trying to pull one over on you and just like wants to create characters and interesting situations. I mainly read literary fiction and then some genre fiction, maybe 30%. And my TV watching is quite promiscuous. Like I watch a lot of prestige TV, but then I also watch like The Bachelor and like really trashy things. But I'm kind of a believer in like consuming information is never bad, because it just kind of permeates into your brain somehow.
Yeah. And I think fiction is a form of escapism, no matter how dark it is, at least for me. I think that's why I really enjoy it, as opposed to the true crime stuff. It can really haunt you because it's real, but there's something about the fiction that makes it feel escapist and not as scary. So I think there's that sort of safe element of it, how we all have this morbid curiosity. So I think that was one of my reasons for asking that question too, just to get a little bit more around that. I want to move to about your journeys as authors. I think nobody really understands how difficult it is, not only to write a book, but to, in a lot of cases, get an agent. And obviously you don't need an agent. You don't need a publisher now. And self-publishing, becoming successful at that, it can be even more difficult. But having your book stand out from everything else that's being released is really, really hard, especially if you're not a celebrity or a reality star who already have these large followings. And that's, something that I experienced as an author. And so I know that we're, a literary nonprofit. I know that there's a lot of people out there watching this who are aspiring authors. So I wanted to hear a little bit about your individual journeys, the bumps in the road and things like that, because it's not easy at all. And anything you want to share about the struggles, the rejections, and how good it feels ultimately when you've persisted. So let's start with Alex for this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Obviously, I think that I've had a long journey of, a disappointment. Sarah and I were just at Thriller Fest, which is the, kind of annual conference of thriller writers. And that kind of got me plugged into, the writing world, because I've been a lawyer for so long. But you can't throw a stone at Thriller Fest and not find somebody who's had just the pile of rejections, or all from the top selling authors to the aspiring authors. It is a road paved with heartache and rejection. And I came to terms with it at some point and realized that, that's really what I think makes somebody a writer. It's like, if you can get through all of that and still keep doing this and loving to do it, then I think that's when you can call yourself a writer. I mean, there's certainly success stories. There's so many people, like I'm always marvel when I meet the 22-year-old at Thriller Fest who's got the great debut and just, hit it up right out of the park. But that was not me. It took me, 10 years of manuscripts I thought were amazing that weren't, and just, going through the ringer. And even now, it's just an ups and down business. You have really high highs, and then you get punched in the stomach. But through it all, I think Sarah and I have talked a lot about this a lot. It's just like, we love to do this, and we want to keep doing it. And that's kind of the name of the game. And that's the piece you can control, is making it the best you can, and just kind of, dealing with the roller coaster.
Mm-hmm. And Vera, what about you?
I'm 42, like, despite being in my childhood bedroom. I've started sending stuff out when I was 17, and I wrote my first novel as an adult in 2013. Queried that, got close to 200 rejections. I wrote a second book, was querying. That wasn't quite working out. And then I wrote this book very fast, and it felt very viral and propulsive. And I thought, if I can't sell this, there's nothing I can get an agent for. So by the time I got an agent for this, I had been rejected by 300 agents. And then this is a book that sold right away at auction, preempted by foreign rights, multiple auctions and foreign rights, film rights sold. So I think if you are good, you don't need to be just good, you need to be good and persistent, and willing to just be knocked down 500 times. If you look on my Instagram, I made a video of visual pictures of all the rejections I've ever gotten. It just kind of comes to the territory. Being a writer is a set of skills, and being a published author is a different set of skills, which includes dealing with rejection and long wait times and editing and all that other kind of stuff.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's nice to hear the reality of it, to those numbers. That's, I think, the reality for most people, 300 rejections, if not more, when you're really pursuing this as a career. And Kirsten, what about you? What was your journey like?
So mine's a little bit different because I am self-published. So I released my first book at 22. I sent out to a few agents and, gotten full requests and then rejections. And at that point, I really just wanted to be published. I wanted to get my story out. And so I talked to some people in the indie world, and I decided to self-publish, and it was not a smashing success. I think my 3 best friends bought it. That was basically it. But I loved that feeling. I loved having it out there. And I was learning how to market and do all of the ins and outs that come with you're not just a writer as an indie author. You have to be the marketer. You have to, run everything. And so it actually took me until book 17 to break even on what I was putting into my career. But now I have 34 books out, and my husband stays home with our daughter, and we live solely on my writing income. So it was a very bumpy road of are we ever going to be able to make this happen? And it really, kind of like Vera said, came down to I just loved it. And I just didn't care if I ever was able to live on the writing income. I just wanted to tell stories. It's, all I'd ever dreamed of doing. And so, luckily it worked out, and, has been really successful now. But again, it is just that you're having to stand out in this like sea of books being released every single day. And so I think coming up with fresh ideas gets harder, with every single book that comes out. And you just have to really like figure out your brand and figure out where, you want your stories to fit in that world, and, hope for the best and just keep going as unique as possible. And I think like being an indie author, I really get to kind of break the mold a little bit. I had some traditional publishers that would say this isn't marketable. And that book that they said that about is my bestseller now. And so it's like, there are readers out there that want this stuff, but you can't, you just have to find your lane and where you fit. And I think, it's just really cool that indie publishing is an option now.
It really is. And that actually you can make quite a good income. I've done both indie and traditional. And, if your indie book is successful, you can actually make six figures, doing that. But it's incredible that you've been able to transition that into your full-time career and support your family. I mean, hats off. Do you mind sharing what book is your bestseller that they said was not marketable?
It's The Arrangement.
I love that one. Yeah.
It's the only book I ever turned into a series. I'm getting ready to release the third book in that trilogy because it just did so well. But yeah, I was told it was too risky. And so by a publisher that I actually had two books with. So it is what it is, but it worked out really well for me because now it just, it's sold over 100,000 copies and it's doing wonderful. So yeah.
Amazing. So publisher doesn't always know best is what we're saying. And Sarah, what about you? And I know we've talked about, that's such a cool story of, wanting to be a writer from little girl and now here you are. So share a little bit more about that.
Reeling from 34 books. That is amazing.
Yeah.
That many, that is just what an incredible accomplishment. Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I mean, I always wanted to write from the time I was a kid, and I became a journalist after college, worked for newspapers and magazines, and then ended up staying home with my kids in my 30s, and had three little boys, and they were so active that I didn't really have a lot of time to write. I had no time to write, in fact, for quite a while, and just missed it so much. And so one night when they were all asleep, which was like a minor miracle because they never slept, I crept upstairs and just started trying to write a book. And I would love to say it flowed out of me and publishers fought over it, but that didn't happen. It took years to write and it was turned down. I did get an agent, but it was turned down by all the publishers she sent it to. I don't know how many she sent it to. She's probably shielding me from that a little bit. And when it was done, I thought, gosh, I really gave it a shot. I thought this was going to work. I had worked with an outside editor. I had been a journalist. I had studied the craft. But like everybody else here on the panel, I couldn't stop. I said, I have to write another one. It's like this itch. It's not even like you always love it. Sometimes you hate it, but you just can't stay away from it. So I spent 2 years writing the next one, and that one was published. But like Alex said, like there are always ups and downs. You would think, oh, you got the publishing contract. Hey, that's great. You're set now. But the fact is, like, you're going to get a nasty review that's going to be in your hometown paper, like, on your reunion weekend, at high school, or you're, somebody's going to say something about your book that's going to kind of catch you off guard. And so you're always going to have these ebbs and flows. You're on the roller coaster. But if the underpinning is that you truly need to write, then it's all we can do.
Yeah. And Sarah, piggybacking on that, I think you're the only one on the panel who has a co-author for some of your books. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what do you like about that? I think that's really cool. You can trade ideas back and forth. It's almost like two heads are better than one, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of a crazy story because I wrote 8 solo books and Greer Hendricks edited 6.5 of them at Simon & Schuster, and then she left Simon & Schuster. By then we were very close because we had worked together as an author and editor for 6 books in 6 years. And she said, I have this dream about writing a book. And, would you mind, like, if I bounce some ideas off you, or if I get some pages together, would you read them? Because I'm not telling a lot of people. And I said, why don't we just write one together? Like, this would be fun. And she was like, let's do it. So we wrote 4 books, a short story and a screenplay together. And we still have another book under contract down the line, but it's been great. I think the big difference is that when you're writing alone, it's kind of thoughts to fingertips and keyboard. When you're writing with somebody, you have to be able to articulate your thoughts. And that has been an extra step for me that I think has been very beneficial in the long run. But it took me a little while to get the hang of, there was kind of a fluency in thoughts to fingertips, and I felt a little stilted in trying to articulate the things that would appear on the page. But now we're, quite comfortable doing that. We'll get on Google Docs and Google Hangouts, talk through ideas for hours. And it's been great to have a partner in crime.
Yeah, and I think you and Greer are a great team. Those are really your New York Times bestsellers, right? Or your collaboration with her. Which is the best selling out of the ones with Greer?
The Wife.
The Golden Couple?
No, The Wife Between Us. For
Oh,
sure.
the one I'm in the middle of now.
Yeah, the first
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, I love the Golden Couple too, but I'm a couples therapist, so I love the premise.
Yeah, we love writing about therapists. Yeah.
Yes. If you ever need some ideas, or I'm happy to share behind the scenes as a source. Yeah, and I guess that also I wanted to ask about your research, because some of your books, as Alex, I'm thinking of yours right now, The Night Shift, there's a lot of procedural police detective stuff. And I mean, I know all of you must have to do some pretty thorough research or interviews, because your books are very convincing, about a lot of the details that we just don't know about because it's not our profession. So how much of all your work is research based, where you're actually interviewing people? Like Sarah said, her book, The Golden Couple, is about a former couples therapist gone rogue who's now a consultant. But I imagine that a lot of the books you write, you may have to consult with other people. So how much is that a part of your process? I guess, well, I'm going to go back to you, Alex, for that.
Yeah, I mean, I hate research, I'll be honest about it. And so what I do is I basically just make up my best guess of what the situation may be. And then I get in a panic when the book is turned in and people are going to actually criticize me for it. And so I kind of go back and talk to a lot of people and I do it the exact opposite the way you should do it, which is research first, then write. But it's worked so far. I mean, but I still get emails about, things that I get wrong, and I just have to live with that. But I know there's just a lot of people who, my problem with research is, it's not that I hate it, but I get lost in the sauce. And so I'll find that I don't write as much because I'm just getting into all, going down rabbit hole after rabbit hole. So for me, getting words on the page is the most important. And then I kind of reverse engineer it. And usually it's close enough that when I talk to a professional, I can make a few changes and kind of go from there.
Yeah. And Vera, what about you? I appreciate, again, I live close to Georgetown, and I worked at GW. And so your all the stuff about the campuses you're writing about, it really reminded me of being on those campuses. And so did you get any research inspiration from professors there, or what was your process?
Well, so I went to GW, and the school in the book is kind of a parody of it, like John Adams, being second GW.
Yes.
I think I kind of I knew a lot of the stuff in the book because of my background in psychology. So the way a psychology department is run, the way a study would be run, the relationship between professors and grad students and RAs and subjects. I did do some research about psychopathy because I wanted to get it right. And I also didn't want to do the thing where if someone's writing about something in depression, they take what's in the DSM and have that person, their personality is what's in the DSM. And that's not real. 10 people with depression could be completely different. So I did do some research on that to make these characters three-dimensional. But I also find that sometimes research happens before you even have the idea. My consumption of true crime, I think, led to this book. Or I read, I think it's Hector Tovar's Deep Down Dark, which is a nonfiction book about the Chilean miner rescue. I read that just like incidentally, and I couldn't stop thinking about the mine as he described it. And there was like always the sound of rock tumbling. And that ended up featuring prominently like in my second book. So just like consuming information, and then, okay, now then incidentally, now I have to do some research about coal mining. But I try to do enough, but not too much, because like ultimately it doesn't matter. You just need to present a feeling to the reader that what you're talking about is real, even if it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. Fake it till you make it almost sometimes too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Kirsten, what about you? What type of research do you do, or interviews with people?
Yeah, so kind of like they've already said, I don't do a ton of research. Actually, since my books aren't like police procedural or anything, I have one legal thriller. They don't have a lot to do with anything like that. They're very domestic and marriages and families and that sort of thing. So I don't have to do a lot of research into, and I purposely don't include a lot of that in my stories because I don't want to get it wrong. I've gotten a lot of stuff wrong. I've gotten emails like Alex. And I try to avoid anything I don't know a lot about. I don't write about places that I haven't been. So I live in Nashville. A lot of my books are set in Nashville, or places that I go on vacation, or a fictional town that I'll just make up. So most of my research is just kind of in the moment as I'm writing something, what would happen here, or what kind of flower would be growing in this area at that time of year, like little things, because like the others have said, I'll do hours of research and then nothing will come actually into the book later. And so it's like I wasted all of that time. And so I really try to just kind of fake it, like Vera said, for what I know or what I can convincingly, put into the story. And then anything that just really needs research, I'll do. But I just really try to keep it to a minimum.
I will say, Kirsten, I think it's your book. It's called The Mother-in-law. That's the title, right?
Yeah.
I learned a lot about squatters and the legal issues behind. So in this book, the mother-in-law just says, I'm not going to leave the house. And, I didn't realize, oh, you have legal rights and what a nightmare ensues from that. So I thought that was interesting. Did you have to research any of that, or you already knew about?
So that story actually came from a Facebook post. Someone was kind of dealing with that with like their renter. And so there was this whole thing, and I just thought it was really interesting. I was like, can people really just like, they weren't actually like, there wasn't a lease. It wasn't an agreement. They were just staying there. It was like a family. And so they were just staying there. And I just thought, I was like, can people do that? That seems insane. And so I went to do research, and I was fascinated by it. And so that's where the idea for that story came from, was just a random post that I happened to see on Facebook.
It's funny because so Sarah, Alex, Vera, Sean, who's not on here, and I are all from the DC, Maryland area. There was recently a listing. You saw that, Vera?
Yes.
And in Virginia,
I read all the comments.
They listed the house with the squatter in it. So you were buying the house with the squatter already in it. And Kirsten, it reminded me so much of your book because I had recently read it. The wild story. I mean, the house was a mess too. They had pictures.
They got offers though.
Yeah,
they still went for 1 million probably.
Yeah, it went for I think 800,000. It had like 5 or 6 offers with a squatter in it, and they're like sold as is with the person in the basement. So anyway, Kirsten, that reminded me. I was like, I learned about that from Kirsten. And Sarah, what about you? As we said, you like to write about therapists. Do you consult with, and you're a journalist, and so I think a lot of that comes out in some of your books too, with the Washington Post and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. And my sister-in-law is a therapist, so she'll read everything and vet everything. But I do kind of a combination. Like Alex, sometimes I don't want to get derailed by going into the rabbit hole of research for something that's maybe going to be a couple lines, a procedural thing in my book. So I'll do the old newspaper trick of writing a capital TK for to come, like headline to come, or clarification to come, and those are sprinkled through my manuscripts, and at the end I'll do a search and be like, oh, I've got to fill in all of these blanks. But if it's something that I know is going to be kind of big and that I might back myself into a hole while writing, I do have some experts on hand. The retired Montgomery County police chief Tom Manger. I'm throwing out his name because he has been in the acknowledgments of a few of my books and hopefully will be in the future, for helping just to kind of fact check, tell me about, if the imaginary case I'm working on would actually unfold that way. And then, podcasts on psychology, reading Psychology Today, whatever it can be, because a lot of the co-written books that Greer and I do have that kind of strong psychological flavor to them.
Yeah, I've actually been impressed with your knowledge in that area, because you get those sort of personality disorders right with that, just like Vera did.
Yeah.
And
Can I throw in two things from just to comment on Sarah and Vera's piece?
Please.
One on Vera's coal mine. Speaking of research, you mentioned the coal mine. I, in my upcoming book, have a character who runs like a reality show in it following coal miners, bizarrely, coincidence. But for research, my wife and I had our 30th anniversary, and like we had this big plan to go to New York and go to Broadway and do all these things. And it was during like when there was a COVID resurgence. And so everything got canceled. And so I went on a research trip to West Virginia to a coal mine on my 30th anniversary. And my wife is really, really happy she's married to a miner, or a writer, I should say. So, and then on Sarah, it's just more of like for any of the aspiring writers, I think it's a good trick that it took me a long time to kind of integrate into my work. But when you're writing, sometimes if you're on a roll, it's great. Like, don't stop. If there's some detail you need, put some kind of marker. Sarah writes TK. I do like a hashtag, and just keep writing, and then come back and you can word search that marker and fill in the blanks later. And I think, for me, it's been really helpful, because if you stop and you research every little side thing, you lose momentum. And I think it's just great to just know that, no, just write until you just run out of steam and go back. You can always go back and fill in the details. So sorry to interject, but those two things came to mind.
No, that's great. And anyone else wants to interject, please feel free. I know we're sort of coming to the end of our hour here. And so I had a couple of just more lighthearted questions. I want to talk about celebrating your success. Again, as a writer myself, I so appreciate how well all of you've done, and the effort, the creativity that it took to get here. So I want to do some celebration here. Can you share a really high moment for you in your writing career, or maybe, a wow, I've made it, or just a moment where you just felt so proud of yourself and, something you celebrated? I would love to hear about that. So Kirsten, let's start with you.
Yeah, so last November, I sold collectively over 500,000 copies. I'd hit that marker, which was a really big deal. And I didn't even realize that my agent actually sent me the message, and, my sales, I'm the one who sees them. So it was kind of funny that she realized it just in our spreadsheet that we keep. But yeah, so it was a really big milestone for me and for all my books. And yeah, that's one of the biggest highs of my career so far.
That's amazing. I'm very happy for you.
Good, thank you.
Alex, what about you?
I'm always waiting for the rug to be pulled out from under me, so I don't celebrate as many. I guess if I had to think of a more recent one, my Danish publisher flew my wife and I out and for the release of the book there, and to just like walk into a bookstore in Copenhagen and have the Danish version of my book there was, I felt like, it was a pretty special thing. And but otherwise, there's lots of the little things along the way. Getting notes from a woman who was like, my father was dying, your book got me through sitting by his deathbed at the time, during a very difficult time. Those kind of things are pretty special, and you get them, pretty rarely. So so it's things like that.
Yeah, very true. And Sarah, what about you? Oh, Sarah, we can't hear you again.
Is this better?
Yes.
Okay. I remember one big celebration with Greer. We got good news that our book landed on the New York Times list when it had just come out. We were in Phoenix at a hotel on book tour, sitting on a courtyard, and we started jumping up and down and yelling. And then there were like 7 people out on the courtyard. we ordered a glass of or a bottle of champagne and tried to share it with all of them. So we were running around toasting with, random business people in Phoenix on a courtyard, and that was a really great, great moment. And then we, went up and fixed ourselves up and went out and did our next event that night and just got right back to it. Started writing the next book a week later.
Yeah. And sometimes just pinch yourself, right? Like, wow, I get to do this. So great. And Vera, what about you? What was your woohoo moment?
I was ready to go on submission. It was actually the first week of March 2020. And we decided not to go on submission because we were like, what is this COVID thing? So we decided to wait. We finally went out the last week of May. And if you recall, that was when the George Floyd protests happened. And I lived in DC. It was like very emotional. I was completely isolated because I live alone. I was not in a pod because I was too scared. 2020 was the most difficult year of my life. And then the book news that it got an offer just like happened really rapidly. And my friends came over and we like saw each other for the first time in months and went to my roof and drank champagne. We're like, we don't care if we get COVID, even though we're social distancing, we're outside because we were. And it was really strange because that year was like, it was the best of times. It was the worst of times because I kept getting good news, but everything else was so horrible. And it was almost like I wasn't allowed to experience joy, but it brought me a lot of joy to see that other people were happy for me. And several of my friends told me like, I have nothing to look forward to this year other than your book coming out. So I was like, okay, if that's it, then that's good.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for your vulnerability and sharing that. Yeah, it is crazy to think about how the publishing industry had to pivot too with COVID, or at least authors, right? Like these book talks, all these things were canceled. And then that's part of how you get your book out there is, meeting people. And luckily we do have social media now as a way to connect with our readers. And are you guys using social media to connect with your readers, or is that not really your thing? You just chime in.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kirsten, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, yeah, I use it. I'm everywhere and I'm on social media every day and all the time and connecting with readers however I can.
And Vera, you were going to say?
I kind of think you have to some extent, but like I was finding Twitter to be a downer after a while of like things that have been going on in the news. And I had to kind of cut down on that. And I look more at Instagram, which is more positive, but sometimes you're like, oh, these are beautiful people on the beach while the world is burning. So I think it's okay to like cut out sometimes. Like the most important way I'll connect with my readers is through my writing, but like on a good day, like, yes, I love when someone has like an adorable post of your book and like they post it and they're so excited. And it's a really great feeling that like we wouldn't have gotten to have that 20 years ago.
Yeah. And Alex, you're not on social media, right? Or at least not on Instagram.
I'm on, well, imagine if your grandfather was on any social media. That's about the equivalent of any post I do, which is really, that's about the interest level it is.
Yeah.
I'm on Instagram, which I do like because I do find it, when I go on, I took it all off my phone because I was, it was just a way to not look at it. But when I go on, I like Instagram the most because it's a real nice reader community, super positive. And so that's about the main one I do. My publisher and marketing people kind of maintain the rest, but otherwise, no, I'm not nearly as skilled as our other friends here.
Yeah, and Sarah, you're an Instagram lover because that I think you've said on your Instagram, that's really how you connect with readers. And a lot of these book bloggers are really what's helped you succeed.
I absolutely enjoy going on social media. But another thing that I've really loved to do is connect with other authors, at events like this. And actually, Alex and I met because we had books coming out at around the same time from the same publisher. And we paired up to do an event together. Then we realized we lived in the same neighborhood. So we began taking these kind of walk and talks about writing. And, I got to be one of the early readers on his upcoming books and, and vice versa. And so it's been really great to have also those friendships with other authors.
For real. Yep. And my last question before we ask what you're working on next and where everybody can find you, and we just talked about Instagram, but I wanted to know, this is a personal question about your own work. What is your favorite book you've written, or you've written, or who is your favorite character from one of your books? So let's start. I'm going to go to Kirsten first.
Okay, well, I have two answers. So my favorite character I've ever written is Ainsley Greenberg from The Arrangement. She's really been a character that my readers connect to. They might not love her, but they certainly have feelings about her. And she's just been a really standout character for me. She's very driven. She gets what she wants. There is no stone left unturned when she wants something. And she was just a lot of fun to write. I really liked being in her head for a while. And my favorite book is probably The Missing, which is the one I talked about earlier, set on the island. Just because for a long time I really wanted to write it, and I just felt like it was I couldn't do it. I felt like it was a little bit out of my league or out of my element. I just wasn't sure that I could get it right or make it convincing or make it enough of a thriller. But it was just kind of my bucket list book. Like, I just want to do this, even if everyone hates it. And so that was the one that I am just really proud that I took a chance on, and yeah, it was just a lot of fun to write.
Awesome. Okay. And Alex, what about you? Favorite character or favorite book that you've written?
I guess my favorite character is, I have a character named, it's an FBI agent named Sarah Keller. And she's in both Every Last Fear, and then I carried her over to the Night Shift kind of in a prequel way. I like her, the number of reasons I write her easy, which very easily. I think readers liked her, and she'll be in the Apple series they're developing, she'll be kind of the centerpiece. In a lot of thrillers, there's husbands and wives, and they're kind of dysfunctional, or they have, somebody's killing somebody, or there's all these issues. And I think what readers kind of resonated with Keller is she's in this really good relationship, and she likes her husband. She's really great at her job. She's no nonsense, and I think she's really decent. And in these times, I think there's something about just somebody being really decent that connects with people. So I'll have to say her for now. In my new book, I'm always kind of the shiny red ball. What's my latest favorite character? I have a kind of aging 80s rock star who reminds me a lot of my failed musical kind of life, who I like quite a bit too. We'll see how he goes.
Awesome. Can't wait to read it. And Vera, I would imagine your favorite character is Chloe, because you talked about wanting to write about that really strong female voice. But maybe I'm wrong. So I would like to hear what you say.
I think she's so funny, which is why I like her. And I still kind of laugh when I listen to the audiobook, even though they're my jokes. I tend to chase the shiny ball too, because right now I'm in love with the characters in my book, the current book that I'm writing. I think the favorite thing I've written is I have a novella called Guava Summer, which is a science fiction sort of inspired by the 1956 Hungarian Revolution, about people living under a totalitarian society, and there's an election and some things go awry. It just has a really, really killer ending. So
that's what you would say. Cool. I'm going to read that. And where can we find that? Your science fiction, is that on
that is available in print only from Radix Media, from their website.
Okay. Well, we can probably get some of that and put it in some notes too. Mm-hmm. And Sarah, what about you? We need to hear you again.
Sorry, so hard to pick, but I would say Vanessa from The Wife Between Us, because she,
AKA Nellie.
Yeah, she has several women, not many, but several women have written or approached me or Greer and I at book signings to talk about difficult relationships in their past that they have escaped, and what the book has meant to them. And so when you hear something like that, it just, it's so meaningful. So
it's a really important, and I do a lot of domestic violence advocacy, and that's what my first book, is a true crime, is about helping women leave these type of relationships or recognizing those signs. And I get a lot of those emails, and it really is important. So I think it's a service to women to have that as an example. But I haven't finished the book yet, so I don't know how it's going to end. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, let's talk about where everybody can find you. I know we talked about social media and what you're working on next, if you can share that. So Alex, we'll go to you. What are you working on? Where are you on Instagram? Where can readers find you?
Well, I'm on Instagram. I think it's Alex Finley author. If I had to guess. I'm on Facebook too. If I had to guess, it's probably something with Alex Finley author. And then as far as what I'm working on, I'm just finishing off the novel that comes out in March called What Have We Done? And just trying to keep my head above water, basically, is where I am.
That's a compelling title.
No, well, thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't come up with it, so
And
they always change my titles. But
yeah. Okay. Kirsten, what about you? I'm sure you're working on a lot. How many do you have in the pipeline?
So I'm getting ready for, like I mentioned earlier, the third book in the arrangement trilogy, the last book, called The Atonement. So there's the arrangement, the amendment, and the atonement. It releases July 1st. So I'm finishing up all the last minute stuff, getting ready for that. And then I'm currently writing my first wedding thriller. I'm excited. I've been wanting to do that for a while. So I'm writing a book around a wedding. And there is a box where people leave letters to the couple to read in a year. And the husband doesn't make it to a year. And there's a letter regarding why. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. And I'm in the middle of that right now. So having a lot of fun.
And where can everybody find you? Instagram, I know you're very active there. Anywhere else? And what's your Instagram handle?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok as at Kirsten Majlin author, and then Twitter is just K Majlin author. So I'm everywhere.
I think the wedding plot's going to be really good. My personal favorite book of yours is The Reunion, so I'd love to see a wedding too.
Yes, I'm excited about it.
Sarah, you're working on something with Greer or by yourself? What's going on with you?
Which I just completed is a thriller that I wrote alone, but same publisher and editor that do my co-written books with Greer. So it'll be out a year from August. It's titled Gone Tonight, and it was one of those books that, we all have maybe one of them that just kind of come out a little more quickly and easily. I know, knock on wood, it's not going to happen again anytime soon, but it was really a pleasure to write this one. So I'm excited for it.
And Instagram, you're on there pretty actively. And where else? Where other social media?
I'm not on Twitter as much, but Facebook for sure. I'm trying to get on TikTok, so we'll see. I'm, like everybody else of my generation, struggling a little, trying to figure it out. But maybe someday I'll be on there.
if you need any advice,
Oh,
yeah. Alex is the TikTok guru.
Oh, by the way, her book's going to be #1 bestseller. It's amazing that the book.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait to read it. And Vera, I know you said you're working on another book, and I know you're on Instagram, but yeah, share what you're working on and where everybody can find you online.
I'm in theory on Instagram, Vera Curian author. If you want to know what I actually think about anything, veracurian.com, where I write really long blog posts about TV shows or movies or just musings, some stuff about writing. I'm working on a novel that's sort of an homage to Stephen King's It. It's about a group of kids growing up in a small coal mining town that is run by this mega church and its charismatic pastor, and they witness a mass murder in the mine and then are investigating it. In the course of investigating it, kill this pastor, and then they have to come back 20 years later because he is still there even though they killed him.
Wow, fascinating. I can't wait to read all of them. I'm really looking forward to finishing the books I haven't read of yours and reading the new ones that come out. Again, thank you so much for being with us at 1455 and helping support our local nonprofit for authors and creatives. So we really appreciate you being here, and thanks again.